Hey, what's up guys? With headshots being needed for pretty much every weapon this year in the Black Ops 6 camo grind, I thought it would be best to give you 8 tips that can really speed up that gold camo grind. Well, 9 if you include the added bonus tip at the end. Starting off nice and simple, my first bit of advice would be to use an optic that you feel comfortable with and a colour reticle that you can see clearly. So many people just copy others, but our eyes are so different, especially when it comes to seeing colour. What works for me might not be what's best for you. Different reticle zooms can also really help, especially the 4x, as it can make it easier to focus on smaller targets, especially at longer ranges. Tip 2 is to make sure you have attachments designed around recoil control and especially horizontal. Make sure to not damage that ADS speed, we want that nice and snappy also. Your only focus should be to get headshots, so worrying about your movement speed doesn't mean much if you're missing all of your shots. Attachments like muzzles, underbarrels and grips are very important when it comes to recoil control, but can also help that ADS speed. So on to tip 3, and this is to use mounting where possible. This sounds incredibly simple, but so many people forget it's even a feature, and even one that can completely eliminate recoil control, making it far easier to pick up those headshots. Not only does it help with recoil, but can also limit the amount of flinch you get, which is obviously useful when taking damage. I tend to mount with more high recoil weapons like the AK, or when the weapon is low level, meaning very few attachments are available. So we're moving on to halfway, which is tip 4, and this is high ground. Stick to high ground wherever possible, as seeing an operator's head from above is not only a massive advantage, but it can also put you above them annoying headies that just seem impossible to kill at ground level. High ground can also be an advantage as you can see more of the map, which allows you to pick people off who either just can't see you or are focused elsewhere. It's far easier to win a gunfight if the opponent doesn't even know they're in one. So moving on to tip 5, which is to stop worrying about dying and your KD altogether. No one cares about KD anymore, so stop worrying about it. It doesn't resemble how good of a player you are with all the SPMM exploits, and let's be honest, we could all just sit in the corner and rack up a better KD. Stop getting frustrated because you lost a fight you would normally win 9 times out of 10, and face the fact that you are going to die more often as you're aiming solely for the head and not to get the kill. At the end of the day, we're camo grinding, not sweating the leaderboard. My next tip is to stick to smaller maps. If you average just 2 headshots for every 10 kills you get, and you finish a game with just 10 kills, it's going to take a very long time to get to 100 headshots. Whereas on a smaller map in the same time period, you might get say 40 kills, which would mean you'd get 8 headshots rather than the original 2. Might not sound much of a difference in small numbers, but with over 1,000 headshots required, you're going to save yourself a lot of time in the long run. This doesn't mean you need to rush into gunfights. If anything, because it's a smaller map, you can set up and wait for the enemies to come to you. And no, this doesn't mean just to camp. This brings me nicely onto my next tip, which is to play the right game mode. For a lot of us, face-off mosh pit will be far the best because of the amount of fights that you get into, but also the little distance between gunfights. Hitting headshots at a close to mid-range is obviously far easier than at long range. If you aren't a fan of tiny maps, I completely understand, then I'm going to recommend you switch to hardpoint or even domination. These game modes are often still fast-paced, which is good for engagement, but it can also be easy to read where the enemies are going to be. I suggest sticking around the objective, trying to take out anyone running to the point, and sometimes they're just sat still capturing it, which should be an easy headshot. So we're going to move on to my final tip, and it's one that I don't use too often, but it is great for weapons like pistols. This is to jump into hardcore, where headshots are often a 1 shot or 2 in worst case scenario. This allows you to be a little less accurate, but there are some downsides to this game mode. Often, hardcore can play very slow and campy, which is a bit boring, but you can also find yourself dying before you've even managed to turn the corner. Give hardcore face-off a try though and see how you go. A little lobby luck and this could be your greatest decision yet. Before we jump into the bonus tip, if you haven't already, hit the thumbs up if the video has helped, and please consider subscribing. Right, bonus tip. Core health is 100 and hardcore is just 30. Yeah, you know this, so what is my point? Well, if you go to the gunsmith page and in the bottom right hand corner, you can see the toggle details. Here you'll be able to see how much headshot damage your weapon does. Some attachments like this barrel can increase your headshot damage, which can now make this a 1 shot in hardcore. For core, it would still be a 4 shot, so it isn't worth adding, especially with the added recoil it gives. Also to note, you can see damage ranges, which can also be important if you aren't playing face off. As always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.